G'day again. Alright, let's talk about the champion archetype of the fighter. And more specifically, let's talk about fixing the champion archetype of the fighter because it's got some issues. Now, let me explain what I mean by that. So one of the things with D&D character types is they tend to fall into three categories that I might call the ever-readies, the short resters, and the long resters. And your ever-readies are things like the rogue assassin build. And the idea is these are the classes that are just always ready to go. Their powers always work. So the assassin build, always when they get the first strike, they're going to get a fair whack of damage that happens right there and then. And then always their sneak attack rules are in effect. So as long as they can maneuver into a position, they can get sneak attack damage. And at that point, it doesn't matter too much what weapons they're using a lot of the time because a lot of it's going to be about that sneak attack damage. Your short resters are things like monks and warlocks. So these are guys that regenerate most of their abilities on a short rest. They have this small pool of points they can use, whether spells or whatever, that they can then use in combat, and it gets used up fairly quickly, but they have reserves they can draw on to give them extra clout in a fight. And as soon as you take a short rest, it regenerates. Your long resters tend to have a bigger pool, but they have to make it last. So that's things like your wizards who have a fair reserve of spells they can use, but it's only at the end of the day they get that back. And most characters fall into one of those categories. Now, I at one point had an idea for a character that was a halfling fighter, and it was very character driven. It was this idea of this sort of Reaper Cheap style fearless hero who also happened to be 3 feet high. And I wanted to go for a really simple fighter build so I could put everything into the character. And so I wanted an ever-ready fighter build. But as I looked into it, I was looking at the basic builds in the player's handbook, and your Eldritch Adept is obviously a long rester because they have spells and they need a long rest to regenerate those, and that's their major sort of trick that they're bringing to the table. And your Battle Master is a short rester, so they've got their superiority dice, and the superiority dice regenerated a short rest, and they've got all these really powerful tricks and tactics that they can bring, but effectively it's like a spell pool that they've got this limited reserve that goes away. So I thought, oh no, I'm looking for a really simple build. I want an ever-ready. And that leaves you with the champion. But the more I was looking at it, the more I realized the champion is not a build that's getting used a lot. And it is a build that people struggle to really make sing. And everything I was seeing online and when people were using it was very much, you have to just go for a great weapon and hope for those criticals. See, the champion has two major advantages. Improved criticals, so early on they get crits on a 19 or 20, and later on they get 18, 19 or 20. And you also get a second fighting style. The second fighting style isn't all that valuable, and the two reasons are the fighting styles, for the most part, tend to be a one or the other kind of trick. They don't tend to stack very well, so it's a ranged ability or a sword and shield ability or a great weapon ability. It tends to be you pick your style and you stick with it. So you're not really using two at once. And also there is a feat called Fighting Initiative. That means pretty much anyone, when they get a feat, can just pick one of these fighting styles, even if they're not a fighter. So that's not a big advantage anymore. Which means that the only thing really that they're bringing to the table is those improved criticals. And that has a power to it. Certainly a great weapon getting 1 in 10 double damage is not terrible. But when you weigh that against some of the stuff that some of the other classes are getting, it's not brilliant. And it also doesn't lean towards other ways of doing a character build. So for example, if you go dual weapon and you want 2 D6 or D8 weapons rather than a D12 axe, then a critical isn't all that great because doubling a D6 isn't a huge thing. So as I was looking at it, I realised that this fighter build I was coming up with, the champion build is almost a handicap at that point. It's really choosing a character build, but I was almost getting this feeling like I was going to be handicapping myself in gameplay, and I was going to be dead weight in the party to use that build. And as the more I thought about it, the more I thought, oh, maybe you go with a ranger. You take the hunter ranger, who is an ever-ready, because he has all these abilities that work once per turn, and you're adding an extra D6 damage to anything that's already wounded, or you've got multiple attack abilities that can attack many, many different creatures, and they always work. So I was actually thinking, well, maybe that's the way to go, but there's all this nature stuff that I don't want with it. I just want the fighting abilities of this class. And I realised there's something wrong when, A, you're kind of saying, I want a fighter build, and the best way to do it is not with a fighter. And B, when you look at it and you say, there's no great ever-ready options for a fighter, and the fighter seems like the ideal choice for an ever-ready class. Because literally they don't use spells, they have a sword and they just hit things with it when you get into a fight. So they are the perfect class to be an ever-ready. But as it was, they have a little bit of healing and a little bit of once per so often you get a second, effectively, attack with the action surge, which are both spell-like effects, and then the Battle Master has lots of spell-like effects, and the Eldritch Addict has lots of spell-like effects, and then you've got the Champion, which just isn't really pulling its weight, and there's this sense of, how do you do an ever-ready? So I've been chatting with DM friends and weighing things up and looking at different possibilities and trying some things out, and what we have is an attempt to fix the Champion build. And it's something worth giving it a try. Not everyone might like this, but give it a go and see how it flies for you. It's basically using the Champion as is with 3 tweaks. 1, at 3rd level, in addition to the improved criticals, the Champion gets to add their proficiency bonus to the damage. Now that's not a massive deal at low levels because it's +2. Barbarians get that whenever they're raging, and they get to rage all the time. As soon as they reach level 6, they've got 4 rages per long rest, and that's going to take them through a lot of fights. But it just makes them just a little bit better at what they do, which is what a champion should be. This is a guy who knows how to use a sword just a bit better than you do. At level 7, whenever you roll initiative, if you don't have an action surge left, your action surge regenerates. Now it only works once every short rest, which means they get an action surge more often, but they only get 1 per combat. So you're never going to be getting someone who's getting 16 attacks in 2 rounds of combat because they're going attack, action surge with 4 attacks. It effectively just means the action surge comes into play a bit more often between your short rests. And the 3rd one is once you reach 10th level, you get to double all the damage on a crit, not just the dice. Now it's a strong one, but have a think about the sort of damage and abilities that the other classes are starting to deal by the time you are getting to 10th level, because that's bringing 5th level spells to the table. And they get to choose when that happens, whereas the champion fighter is basically waiting for those crit dice. So those are just 3 little tweaks that make the champion a little bit better at what they do. And it also means they are the ones that stay good when you are running out of reserves. So they fit in with the Hunter Rangers and the Thief and Assassin Rogues, with those warriors that their powers are just always good. And that means as you're getting to the end of a long gaming day, or if you you've been caught flat-footed by the DM and you're getting encounter after encounter, these are the guys who are now coming to the fore. They're not bringing fireballs to the table, but they are just dealing solid damage while everyone else is flagging and running out of reserves and getting a bit desperate. And that's sort of what the champion is supposed to be. Now, not everyone's going to agree with this, but have a think about it. Give it a try. Try it with your players, see how it flies. Let us know in the comments whether you think it's a good build or not. But give it a go. Thanks for listening. See you next time.